Welcome to The Ground. You're listening to The 100 podcast, a show about CW's sci-fi series, The 100. I'm Dan, your mountain man, and today I'm joined by my favorite grounder, Olga.
Hey everybody, today we're discussing Anaconda, the backdoor pilot to The 100's potential spin-off series.
Yes, and as you may notice, longtime viewers, we went back to our old names because now we're in the past. It's a prequel.
Right.
So we have to come up with even prequelier names.
I was going to say, I don't think they're prequely enough names,
Yes.
Considering grounders are just like people.
We're just people too.
Uh-huh.
All right, a little bit of housekeeping. Obviously, it's been a while since we did a legitimate 100 podcast.
It's good to be back, y'all.
Good to be home. I'm home away from home. So this is both a video and an audio podcast, just because I wanted to make sure I got something out for YouTube this week too. But that
Gotta please that algorithm.
That being said, so we're going to get it on audio podcast platforms in addition to the video. But for audio people, you might not have been following my very important YouTube channel, youtube.com/doingok. We've actually done a few 100 related videos there that I just wanted to pimp out.
Yeah.
We did one about the best moment from each season of the 100 you might want to check out. Also, my first sort of reactions to hearing about the prequel, which we're going to talk about in more detail here. And then we also did like Lock and Key review, Killing Adventures of Sabrina reviews. Check it out.
It's some good stuff.
I'm
not in all of it, but I'll forgive Dan for that. Mostly because I don't want to be.
And then the last piece of housekeeping here is our challenge that I brought up to you earlier today. And I don't know if we're really going to do this, but I'm bringing it up to the audience.
Maybe if we promise people something, we'll actually have to follow through.
Yes. I floated the idea by my favorite grounder here.
Yeah. Of a huge time commitment.
Of leading into season 7, doing 6 podcasts, one on each season, as we rewatch every episode, and ranking all 100 episodes of the 100 as we go. So,
oh my.
Not going to do 100 podcasts, but one in each season. But within each season, we will rank them and then add them into the overall list.
Yeah, no, we're not redoing early. We started with season 3 with weekly episodes, so we're not redoing those.
So I think it would be kind of cool to do that. Unfortunately, we do not know the release date of season 7 yet. So until I know that, I don't necessarily want to start doing this now and then have a big gap. But...
Although we will be at Conageddon in April, no longer on St. Patrick's weekend.
Yeah.
And we were talking about doing a potential rewatch.
Yeah.
For the con. So maybe we'll have it started. We'll see.
Let us know what you think. If we're insane, insane enough.
Does this interest people? Do you want to go back?
Yes.
Let us know.
All right. Now it is time for the news. Ho, ho, ho. Now, I made this beautiful outline here without Olga really ever looking at it.
Yeah, because I kept being like, Dan, I haven't had time to look at it. Dan, can I look at it? And then Dan's like, yeah, so we're starting the podcast. I'm like, well.
And so I'm throwing you in the deep end. This is your
I'm sorry if it's a shit show.
Reading time to shine.
Oh, my turn.
Okay, starting with TV Guide.
All right. The CW announced its plans to start developing a spin-off of The 100 in October of 2019, and details are still few and far between at this point.
Ooh.
But it is a prequel series. This potential spin-off would be set 97 years before the events of the 100 pilot, occurring during the time period when a nuclear apocalypse wiped out a huge chunk of the planet's population. It will depict the birth of the culture the 100 fans know as the Grounders, as survivors of the apocalypse band together in an attempt to create a new society. There will be a backdoor pilot in The 100 Season 7. Like so many other CW shows before it, The 100 will attempt to launch its first spin-off with a backdoor pilot episode. Wait, first spin-off?
Well, if you're Vampire Diaries or Arrow, you're going to have 20 spin-offs, so.
Here's hoping, question mark. We don't yet know which episode of Season 7 will serve as the backdoor pilot, but we do know it will fall in the back half of the season. The title for the backdoor pilot is Anaconda.
Anaconda.
But that won't be the title of the actual spinoff.
Okay.
So they've named it, but we don't know.
So it's
So.
not Anaconda, which
My
I found
Anaconda don't
want that.
want that.
I liked the idea of it being called Anaconda.
No,
But
I never did.
Interesting that it's not going to have the same name as the final product, if there is a final product.
Whatever the title is going to be, I assume they'll bring it up in the Backdoor Pilot.
Be like, the 100 apocalypse is happening now.
Are they going to do like American Horror Story, like the 100?
Yeah, that's what I was.
Grounder time.
Yeah, someone wrote in with the 100 apocalypse as an idea. All right, so I have a few questions marked here to sort of just talk about the general information. None of this is super new, aside from the fact that Anaconda isn't the actual title. But we're going to get into the casting that came out today. But before we get into that, do you want this show?
We've talked about that already a bit on the podcast. Yeah. And even though it's been months, I still don't really know. Honestly, I'm leaning towards no.
Really? Okay.
Yeah, I'm just like, I am fine with not knowing some of the questions because, like, at the end of the day, like, we know where things end up. Yeah. And so it's just kind of not that interesting to me, like, to ask, like, well, there is no what happens next because we know the conclusion. Like, the stakes seem relatively low to me unless they go to they themselves then go to another planet or something like that. But it's not because it follows
they're gonna have to me, in my opinion, they're gonna have to be like, oh, actually, you had no idea that this thing was happening over here. Yeah. While still sort of seeding in some explanations of things that are left hanging. I'm excited for it. I don't like prequels. This is not the spinoff I would want, but I want a spinoff.
Oh, I'm with you. I want a spinoff. And I'm with you as well on top of being like not super interested in prequels in general. I'm not interested in the Game of Thrones prequels, and I like Game of Thrones. Yeah. Asterisk. But still, like, it's just not an interesting subject for me. Yeah, and particularly this prequel, I think that the Grounder mythology is one of the biggest problems with the show, and so then making that the focus is not necessarily exciting. The thing is, I am excited because I'm like, right now I'm more excited about this than season 7, which sounds ridiculous. But let me explain why. Yeah, you have to back that up. Because it's a much bigger question mark to me as far as like, what the fuck is this show gonna be? How are they possibly gonna make this work? And so like, I'm just like, I have like morbid curiosity. Whereas I have morbid curiosity about season 7. I have more dread as well with season 7. It's like I'm more worried about it being terrible than I am excited for it at this point. I don't want the spinoff to be terrible either, though. Like that would suck. Yeah, but that's lower stakes. I don't know. I feel like if it's a bad season 7. And it's a bad backdoor pilot to another show. It's like, oh crap, what were you planning for the this property? The backdoor is never a bad option, in my opinion. So at Tucker Ross Khan writes in, I have no idea why CW would even consider a spinoff. Considering the show has alienated many of its original fans, I'm not sure it would be successful. So do we think that so right now it's a backdoor pilot, which means that they are putting this in to be like, what do audiences think of this? How many people will tune in for this episode? And so they have not greenlit it as a season yet. Right. Part of the question is, will they greenlight it as a season before we even get to see it? Because of the weirdness of when is the 100 possibly going to come out? When is this episode going to come out? Yeah. When do they plan it? If the spinoff was happening, when would that come? It's all like weird stuff. Timing is just up in the air. Now, the CW has a history of, it has a history of creating spinoffs, but it also has a history of having backdoor pilots that go nowhere, specifically from Supernatural, which had 2 backdoor pilots, both which went nowhere. So, and they also right now have another Arrow backdoor pilot they just did. We all know if that's going to work. So, this could go nowhere. Right. Do you think it will go nowhere? And then if you do think that it will get picked up the series, do you think people will watch it? Okay. God, it's so complicated.
Mhm.
Because, like, the hundreds viewing numbers have been going down. Live viewing numbers have been going down consistently.
Yeah.
Like, with every season,
Yeah.
kind of with every episode. So it's one of those things where it's like, will they pick it up even before it airs? Like, that's such a question to me.
Yeah.
Let's just say they will.
Mm-hmm.
Because maybe they want to keep a good working relationship with Jason or whatever. They renewed the show for when it wasn't doing amazing numbers live either. I do think people will tune in.
Mm-hmm.
I do not think it will ever match peak 100 numbers.
Yeah.
But maybe it'll reach like season 5 numbers and maybe it can hold on to them. Like if it can... If it does like season 6 numbers, I don't think it stands a chance.
Well, here's the thing. Here's the question. So this could go in so many directions where I could honestly, like, I have no real faith in any option. Like I like if I had to like put money down, I don't know what I would put my money down on because I could see them picking it up. I could see them not picking it up. I could see them picking it up and it working out by CW standards, or I can see it being a total flop. But like, here's the thing, like CW has very low standards. They do still cancel things after one season, but it's pretty rare. Like if you look at the numbers for Dynasty, which has been up through season 3 now, those are very low numbers. And if they're thinking of the 100 prequel potentially as a summer show, then they're maybe even having lower expectations for it.
Yeah.
I personally believe, and I know other people don't, but I personally believe that they actually are ending the 100 because Jason wants to. I don't think that they would have canceled it personally.
Yeah, I still don't really know where I stand on that because you end season 5 with end book 1 and then like what the hell?
Weird choice, but at the same time I'm like I don't if they were canceling the 100 because of numbers, you would not be talking about doing a spinoff at all.
So they would just be like, people aren't interested in this universe.
So then the question becomes, I think that CW thinks that there's a loyal enough fan base there that it's worth looking into a spinoff. And whether it's because of live numbers or because they're seeing the Netflix numbers or, now CW has all this weird stuff with HBO and everything. The question becomes... will that fan base show up? What percentage of the fan base is super pissed off?
Yeah.
Because if there's very vocal people on Twitter. Jason puts out information about the prequel and not about season 7, and people flip out. Somewhat understandably, debatable.
Right. But the 100 has had its like share of controversies that we've addressed in the podcast and everything, and they make people angry and. A lot of people are angry enough to be like supportive of the cast and certain characters, but no longer really watching the show. Like they'll stay in the fandom, but not happily. So I don't know if they're like, well, once these characters are gone, if they're going to be willing to like give it another chance.
Yeah. I mean, to me, the fate of this project rests on season 7.
Yeah.
Because, like, if season 7 ends and the majority of people are happy with how it ended and thought it was a good final season, that they'll probably have some goodwill. And hopefully, here's the other thing. Even if they pick it up before we get to see it, the point of the Backdoor Pilot, then that case, is... people will watch it because it's part of season 7, then hopefully they'll like those characters and want to come back for them.
They have to be charismatic. Like, we have to give a shit.
And the thing is, Jason, for everything else, he and his people have amazing casting records.
Oh, absolutely.
And every season they've introduced characters that I enjoy.
Yeah. I mean, like... Josephine, Russell, Gabriel, like these are all characters that are,
Diosa's pretty recent.
Diosa's relatively recent. Like these are all 11th hour like additions to the show, and we were so on board with them.
Yeah.
So I do think that as long as the characters are there and the actors pull it off, which they probably will, like people are gonna like them.
So now my other question to you is, what do you think the effect will be if Bellark doesn't happen? Do you think that if Bellark doesn't happen, that basically kills the prequel? Or am I putting too much stock into the amount of Bellark fans and also how angry they would be?
I think I honestly think that in some way it's too late for the Klexas.
Yeah.
So, like, yeah, you're kind of banking on the Bellarks to still care about your universe even while the show is over.
To be clear, there are plenty of Klexas that are still watching.
Oh, I know.
But,
I know there are. But
Yeah.
I'm just saying that, like, the numbers, I don't know.
I mean, here's the thing.
It's hard to tell.
When you look at the fandom, right,
Yeah.
as opposed to the people who are casual fans, the fandom feels very shipper focused. But is that the reliable, like the majority of the reliable audience?
Are they the vocal minority or just the majority?
Yeah. I really don't know.
I don't know. This is something we talk about in our free time because we're nerds. And yeah, we don't know. Like, it's so hard to tell. Like, Conageddon doesn't really give us a good idea. I thought it would help us make that decision. It doesn't.
Yeah.
Still no idea. Yeah, I don't know.
Yeah. And
people are going to be so angry if it doesn't happen.
And then, I mean, am I also not giving people enough credit that maybe even if it doesn't happen, they'll still care about the universe? And
especially since these characters wouldn't be on the prequel.
Yeah.
Like, that's the thing. These characters will, in theory, become somewhat irrelevant to maybe at least the first season of the prequel.
Yeah. Well, I mean, the question...
It's so hard to know.
I mean,
once you introduce, like, mind drives and shit, like...
Yeah. I wouldn't blame anyone if Bellark didn't happen for not wanting to watch more, because I can understand feeling toyed with and played around with and not wanting to invest in another potential relationship or
especially if you feel like
characters.
the showrunner is, like...
baiting you. And,
yeah. Which...
All right, let's get into the second bit of news via Deadline.
Yola Evans from Carnival Row, Adane Bradley from Riverdale, and Leo Howard from Why Women Kill are the first to be cast in CW's The 100 prequel Backdoor Pilot from The 100 developer, executive producer / showrunner Jason Rothenberg.
Quite a title there, buddy.
Mouthful. Do you have anything else? Your lordship? The Sofa King of Toronto? Or
Evans will
play Callie, whip smart and passionate, with a rebellious streak to boot.
Ooh.
We expect nothing less from this show. Callie has spent years ignoring expectations in order to fight for the causes in which she believes. But when the apocalypse devastates the world she had been working so hard to save, Callie must find a new purpose and future for all that remains of humanity.
Let's stop there.
Yeah.
I mean, I just throw out that the second characters are brothers, so it's going to be a brother-sister dynamic in theory.
We like those on this show.
Do we? Debatable. Interesting that, so a number of these characters seem to be, like, activists, and obviously we know from Josephine in season 6 that, like, people were going to, like,
protests
and things like that. Obviously, even before the nukes, things were not going great. So, interesting that, I mean, we assume this is the main character of the show, right? It seems she's the first person they're talking about, seems like this would be the main character. Interesting to me that it's not Becca, which we can get into more in a little bit. Also interesting to me that they don't seem to be Second Dawn people.
Yeah.
And that they're still teenagers-ish, 20-somethings, which is the reason we had them in theory in this show is for a very specific plot reason, right? Whereas in the prequel, why
it's like,
is that the focus?
Who's the, first of all, audience? But second of all, it's like, who's young and like, feels like they can actually make a difference. Yeah. And it's like, the youth.
Yeah. I do think that it's a more interesting place to start a main character than where Clark started, personally. To be like, hey, I had this whole world and now it's totally turned upside down. Which I guess you could argue Clark does too.
I was about to say, wait, who are you talking to?
But I don't know. I guess it is.
Well, they're starting from Clark arguably started from a place of privilege and losing out on that of my world shattered because the relatively idyllic society I knew has crumbled. Yeah. Whereas this is we're fighting for survival, and now survival got even more like real.
Well, and I think that it's kind of cool that even though obviously it's not like legitimately our world, these characters are kind of from our world, right? In a way that the arc isn't.
And especially if you look at like environmental disaster being an impending problem in our society.
There are no problems. No idea what you're talking about.
Okay.
Bradley will portray Reese, hardworking and headstrong. Reese has spent a lifetime in fierce competition with his beloved sister, Callie. But when the opportunity to finally prove his worth comes with an incredible cost...
Not a word, but okay.
When finally prove his worth comes with an incredible cost, Reese must figure out what lines he is willing to cross and finally come out on top.
I feel like this is setting him up to be a second Donner.
A second Donner. Ooh.
Yeah.
Yeah, like Richard Donner, director of Superman.
I don't know what to do with this information, but okay. Yeah, I mean, like something like this where it comes out of left field and something. And also, like, seeing as how in the 100, the sister became the cult leader.
Yeah.
You know, it would be kind of cool. The brother becomes a cult member. I don't know. I'm just seeing parallels.
The other thing I have to think about, you know, it's like, you assume, hey, they're setting up the core relationship dynamic, but it also could easily be, hey, the pilot happens, her brother dies, and that is her strong motivation, you know? So you never know where that goes. But that sounds like an ongoing role to me.
It does, and also...
People of color.
People of color and don't kill another Wells in very early episodes. Yeah. Howard is August, a rebellious and passionate musician. August is a member of a radical environmental group dedicated to saving the planet by any means necessary. After the apocalypse, he must figure out how to go on when everything he had been fighting for is gone.
So
that's interesting.
Everybody seems to be in these various groups that seem, you know, akin to things like the Second Dawn or Dios's army and like radical elements. They're not necessarily, you know, they're not necessarily Second Dawn religious folk.
Yeah.
But,
not yet.
You know, people that could be swayed in a direction by a charismatic leader.
Evans and Bradley have series regular options to return if the pilot is picked up to series.
And it's interesting that Howard does not seem to have that. Doesn't necessarily mean he won't show up again. But he's also, in some ways, I guess you would argue, the biggest name of the three. It says here that he's a world-class martial artist, and he's been in a lot of roles where he does stuff like that. And he's a Disney kid. He was in Kickin' It, where he kicked it.
It's that's out of my time watching Disney.
He's also a CW guy. He's been on Legacies, and so he's a little bit more...
well, I mean, so is Bradley. He was on Riverdale.
Yeah, but only like 2 episodes. I don't know. My point is that being a Disney kid is a little bit more high profile.
Yeah.
Also, the fact that he has this martial arts training
and
could be cool.
Stunts and action are part of this show.
Also, I found out that Yola has jiu-jitsu training. Interesting.
Okay.
Everybody's kung fu fighting. All right.
That's incorrect. Jiu-jitsu and kung fu are different.
Now let's talk about the timeline here, because when I did my very great prequel video, I had a few inaccuracies. So I want to talk about
the controversial timeline.
That we're using the timeline from the wiki, the 100 wiki, which generally does not steer me wrong. So let's talk about a few of these things, and so then we can talk in conjunction with knowing the timeline, what things could actually show up on this show.
So, on October 20th, 2051, Allie chooses her avatar to be Becca and confirms her mandate is to make life better by fixing the root problem of too many people.
Oh.
And then on May 10th, 2052, so like 6-ish months later, Allie causes the nuclear apocalypse.
Yes, and the prequel in theory takes place like right after this-ish. Maybe a couple months, I don't know, maybe the same day.
October 1st, 2054.
2 years later.
Yes. The Alpha Station destroys the 13th station, known as Polaris, leading to the unification of the 12 remaining stations into the Ark. And Becca descends to Earth with Allie 2.0.
So this is the first important point.
Yes.
Becca, if the show really, it says specifically taking place 97 years earlier, when the bombs first hit, Becca doesn't show up for 2 years.
Mm-hmm.
So unless they're jumping around in time, Becca, in theory, isn't going to show up for until like a season 3, or maybe they'll speed through certain times. I don't know, but she's not going to be there right away. And it comes off to me that the core idea of the series can't really be about
Becca,
yeah, it can't be about, but it also can't necessarily it has to be about more than just the Grounders and how the Grounders came to be, because she doesn't show up there at first. So it has to be more about the Second Dawn first. And then,
I think it really will be about like the people who weren't Second Dawn
dealing with the
Second Dawn. If we're going back to factions, I think it'll be like the Second Dawn is the main
antagonist.
And then everyone else has to either like are just like random tribes and groups like fighting for survival or trying to like join Second Dawn.
And then the other question is, how much will we get of before the bombs? Will we get flashbacks of Becca before the bombs? Will we get maybe Dioza before the bomb?
That would be cool.
Yeah, that would be a good way to bring some people in.
It would, because again, like, you have good characters, and also flashbacks are kind of important in the 100. Like, it's a fun part of the show.
Yeah.
And if you're going to unify the world and, like, maybe the style a bit, I think flashbacks would be the way to go.
Now, I'm going to jump ahead a little bit here to 2093, I believe it says. You want to read that one? Yeah.
All right, 2093. The doors of Mount Weather are open. 54 people die of radiation, including Dante's sister and mother. Dante goes outside for 5 minutes. Presumed beginning of the experimentation on outsiders.
So that's 40 years after the bombs. So Mount Weather probably will not take a huge role in this. Now, a lot of people are like, whoa, you could show up in the Arcs, you could show in Mount Weather, you could even show on Alpha with them creating Sanctum. That, to me, doesn't make sense as a television show. Because if the Arc can't interact with the ground, if Alpha can't interact with the ground or the Arc, and if the Mount Weather can't leave Mount Weather, then there's, like, it's not the same thing as when you had season 1 of the 100, and eventually, well, first of all, the two sides had connections to each other, and then eventually they came together. You can't just like unendingly have two completely separate plot lines going. Now maybe again they play with our expectations in some way, and one person from the Arc did get down and we just never knew it or something. But like, I don't know.
As usual, it's like, well, the writers know more than we do, but at the same time, it's like, just why? Just focus on new stuff. Like,
but that's the thing. The description for the show says nothing about Mount Weather or the Arc or Alpha. People just start talking about that. So I'm taking the description of the show at its word. This is about the people on the ground.
And I genuinely hope that's the truth, because they've introduced enough things that we don't know too much about that could be fleshed out, as opposed to like, we know what happens with the Mountain Men specifically.
Yeah.
That was a great season, but like, I don't need to see Dante as a young man.
Yeah, and similarly, like, I put in here that it's 55 years after the bomb that Kane is even born. So like, we couldn't even have like young Kane or something. Like, we could have people's parents and grandparents, but like, I don't particularly care about that.
Yep.
Yeah. Now, my other question here is, do you think the Anomaly plays any sort of role in any of this? And are we making too many assumptions? Is it possible that this isn't just a prequel, it is a pre-sequel?
Well, that's what I was saying kind of at the top of this podcast, of like, once you introduce like super sci-fi things and the sort of fantasy element of the Anomaly, it's like, just because it starts off as a prequel in the past and starts off on the ground and is about the Grounders, like, we know enough about the show and the greater universe to say it doesn't have to stay there, and they could do a time jump, or the time jump could not be for some characters and would be for others. Like,
well, so that's the thing. We don't know enough about the Anomaly yet. Because my question is like, could it even be that this show takes place in an alternate reality version of right after the bomb, like where they somehow alter time, and so it's a different, like, so we don't know what their future is going to be because things have all been altered, and maybe even Becca comes down right away, or maybe Becca dies in the bombs because she never went up there. Like, it's possible. I don't think that will happen.
I don't like that.
I'm not saying I want that. I'm just saying that could be also a way of bringing in a couple of our characters into this timeline or something. Like you could have like a Mori or someone show up. I'm just spitballing.
Well,
I don't think from what they've set up with the Anomaly so far, it seems like it's time dilation. It does not seem like it's time travel, and therefore I do not think it will have an effect on this prequel. But the fact that they're having this backdoor pilot within season 7
and in the back half.
Yeah, who knows?
I think that the Anomaly could play a part in making it evident what happens and make it maybe relevant to like the third act as a transition for some characters to like witness something or whatever. But all in all, I'm just kind of like, it's the whole thing of time travel of like, once you know about a thing, is it going to happen in the same way? So if like a main character from this backdoor pilot finds out like, no, Earth is like all of these awful things happen because of of what these people make a choice of that we could affect now. Like, it changes too much.
Here's the thing. Ultimately, if they found a good way to do it, I do think I would prefer some Anomaly shenanigans because that gets rid of the prequel problem if we don't actually know where things are going. But
then it's only a prequel in the sense that part of it starts earlier.
Yeah, I don't think that's gonna happen. I think it's gonna be a prequel. But who knows have the Anomaly? We have a green mist going crazy over here.
An Aurora Borealis.
All right, now
mystery.
Time for a favorite segment.
Oh no!
Are you ready for title fight?
I should have known this was coming.
No, I didn't have my little dingy thing, but ding ding title fight.
Where's the ding ding? It's in the dining room. Dinner is served. Ding.
Anaconda. So this is the name of the backdoor pilot.
Yep.
A group of large snakes found in tropical South America. So it's a big snaky, an anaconda. Don't want none. And from @LittleBestSong from Twitter pointed out, a serpent eating its own tail is often interpreted as a symbol of eternal cyclical renewal or a cycle of life, death, and rebirth. The symbol of the 100 is infinity.
Yep.
Very cool.
Yeah.
I like that a lot. We'll see.
Well, so that's the thing. Like, as soon as I heard Anaconda, I was like, my mind went straight to a snake eating its own tail. Yeah. But I thought it was weird that they chose Anaconda specifically because it's like, I don't know. It's it's a franchise already. I know that's not like a new franchise or whatever.
At this point, it doesn't matter. It's just the name of the episode.
Right.
So one could argue that this also pushes the Anomaly being part of it.
I was thinking that because if it's like also this whole thing of maybe we could prevent something and then it just makes it happen or whatever. It's just like, this is the thing that made it worse. Yeah. You know,
cycles or maybe it's we go back and we see how everything started and we're like, we can't let this happen again. Ooh, boobs.
I can't with this guy. Can't take him anywhere.
All right, so now here are I'm spitballing some ideas for an actual title for this show.
Okay.
Second Dawn, I think is pretty likely.
I like it.
It's not bad.
It's not bad. It's just like, it's not too generic. It's a little generic.
It's not too bad. I think it could work. It makes sense both thematically and as just for any, for any person. They're like, oh, I get it. It's the rebirth of the world or whatever.
Yeah.
Right? From the Ashes or We Will Rise. Now, the only I don't like either of these titles.
Yeah.
But it specifically calls out in the premise of the show, From the Ashes of the Old World. So, and we know how much they fucking love that tagline. We'll see.
I just
hoping not. Now, my personal, one of my favorites, which I know will not probably happen, and you'll explain why. I love the idea of Ground Zero. Now,
why do I need to explain why?
Because it has 9/11 implications.
That's it. That's my entire argument against it.
But Ground Zero is a term separate from 9/11, which means the point at which an explosion a major nuclear type explosion occurs. Also, it has the word ground in there. It has a number like the 100, and it's like day zero of the new world. I think Ground Zero would be an awesome title.
Again,
not going to happen.
It's not going to happen. At this point, like in the United States, we just have that
implication.
There is only one Ground Zero here.
Prime Fire, a lot of people talk about. Not going to happen.
That's not going to happen.
You can barely spell it.
And also, like, that's not going to bring in new viewers.
Yeah.
Like, what the fuck?
And
what's a Prime Fia?
And then there's the stuff people talked about with like the 100 apocalypse or the 100 something something. I don't think I don't think we're gonna do that.
I need them to let go of the idea of the 100 as a number.
Yeah.
Because
it doesn't make sense.
It doesn't.
Yeah.
And frankly, 97 years doesn't make any sense either between certain happenings. But that's never made sense.
I was going to spitball to you that in season 7, we rate the episodes out of 100 delinquents.
How many delinquents will we kill off in our rating?
Exactly. Yeah, I don't think we're going to get that. They haven't done that for any spinoff in the past that I am aware of. So, and then my favorite that I tweeted out today, I don't know if you saw.
Yeah.
Radioactive. It just makes sense. I mean, it harkens back to the show, but a normal audience wouldn't know that, and it just sounds like a cool show. It makes sense because it's after the bombs. I think it's simple. It's good. I think it would be really cool. I still think Second Dawn is more likely.
Yeah, I'm going to put Second Dawn as the most likely, but I really do like the idea of just calling it radioactive.
Yeah.
Like, it's straight and to the point, but you don't know everything in relation to it. You know, like it doesn't have to harken back to like a specific reference. And I'm okay with that. Yeah. And I like that.
Yeah. All right. So we're going a little long on this. I wanted to read some feedback.
We are a verbose couple.
We had some feedback. We will probably circle around and do another one of these hiatus pods. So especially if you send in more thoughts, if there's more news about season 7, or the prequel or whatever, we will be back at some point and we will read some of these feedbacky things. Right now, I want to go and edit this recording we're doing so that I can get it up for tomorrow. But I will keep this outline with all your cool thoughts, guys. And if you want to be part of the podcast in the future, there's a myriad of ways that you can do that, Olga.
A myriad.
You can either go to @the100podcast over on the Twitters and leave us a good old tweet. Or you can go to the100podcast.com and
fill out the contact us form.
Yeah. Or you can go to the100pod@gmail.com.
You don't go there. Just go to your email and email the100pod@gmail.com.
You can leave a comment down below the YouTube video at youtube.com/doingok, DOINGOK. Also, please rate us or review us on iTunes or Stitcher. That would be a lovely bunch of coconuts. Also, check out TV Time. They're in partnership with us. They're a good app. I use them a lot, actually.
They are quite helpful.
Yes, they added movies, so you can see what movies you want to watch. And
now they have to change their title.
TV Movie Time. Let's just do one I have one little feedback I'll add here.
A little feedback.
Because we got from NJ over on the100podcast.com, contact us thing. They said a few things that are now out of date about Anaconda being the title of the actual thing. But they put a very simple thing I wanted to ask you here, which is, how do you feel about season 6 now that some time has passed? I think the season aged well, and it's still in the top 3 best seasons for me.
I think so too, vaguely, of my memories. Like, here's the thing. Now that it's been some distance, I only have, like, truly fond memories of it. And I have to, like, peel them away to be like, why didn't I like it? And then all the bad comes hitting me in the face. Yeah. But it's like, I have to make an effort to remember the stuff I didn't like.
Yep.
And the stuff I did like is just, like, sitting on the surface.
Yeah. I still think I definitely liked it better than 4 and 5. And I thought it was a good season. I think that the saddest thing about the season is that it could have been amazing and it ended up having enough issues along the way that it was just better than to me, it just like we had been going downhill since season 2, and then it just kind of tapered up a tiny bit, but it didn't like get back up to that.
Yeah. That's unfortunately our takeaway of it could have been great.
But it was solid.
It was solid.
Give him a pat on the old back.
So.
All right. So all that being said, Olga, may we meet again.
May we meet again.